Good evening and welcome back. This is part 2 of the Unic French radio restoration. In part 1 we looked at just how ugly the case is. We removed the chassis and did some troubleshooting and found the problem, why it wouldn't work. I then replaced all the caps and fixed the switch that I broke. And I got a substitute Magic Eye running. This week I thought I'd work on the cabinet and try and restore it back to its original colours and look. I hope you'll enjoy part 2 of my French radio restoration. I think it's time to have a look and see what we can do with this rather awful looking case. Now it's largely screwed together and there was some glue in these corners here. So my plan is I'm going to dismantle the case completely into its component parts. It needs to be put back together securely as well, so get rid of all the poor joints that are in there now. So that's the inside of the top, so I can undo screws. That's holding the top onto the sides. This is the bottom here, along here, and that's the side, and it's just glued with little wedges in there. I think it's got some nails in the bottom. So I think this will just about take some screws out, it'll fall apart. Well, there it is. Didn't take long. I don't think I need to pull it down any further than that. Now, it did reveal a few things. And here's the bottom of it. So you can see the colour of the timber underneath the paint. Hopefully I can get this off and recover the original timber. I hope to do that. Now here's the piece of timber that was on the inside of that edge where the faceplate goes. And there's the original colour. So it's just a cream colour. So I can probably try and match that. And it goes around the corner here. You can see it here. Here's the frame that was around the speaker and the dial. I've just turned it over. You can see the colour in there as well, so I'm wondering if this was originally a cream colour as well. I reckon it was that colour. Now I don't know how I'm going to determine what colour these were. These are plastic. They've been moulded over on the back there so that they're glued on. Might even have to just paint them again with something. The fact that the melted over plastic is a white colour would probably indicate that they were a cream colour as well. I've got the knob here. It looks like they've just coloured with a felt pen or something. It's a very light colour. And you can see in the back there where they've folded the metal over it, it looks like a bronzy colour. So hopefully I can just clean that off somehow. I think before I do any paint stripping or anything, I'm going to do some repairs, some cracks here. So that's cracked, this end bit's loose, so I'll take that off and refit it. Down here there's a piece missing and I'm pretty sure that was there when I pulled it apart, so I'll find that and glue that back on as well. I left the adhesives to dry overnight, so everything's good. What I'm going to do is paint strip these pieces of timber and we'll see what it looks like underneath. Hopefully I can reuse them, otherwise I'm going to have to veneer it. Now that's working fairly quickly, so I'll just let it sit for 20 minutes or so and come back and scrape it off. Well, that's really attacked that paint, it's coming off. And there's also an orange under it. Do you think it was orange underneath at some point? Yeah, okay. So far the timber underneath looks alright, so I'm just going to keep working on this and come back when it's all finished. I've sanded these back. They're rather a coarse paper. I need to keep going to bring it back to smooth. But before I do, the grain has green paint in it, and I don't know how to get it out. So I'm just going to try a few things. Now there's no green paint anywhere, so I can't test it. This is a bit of acetone, and there's a little bit of paint there. Some of the off the top, so that's not taking it off. It's actually taking the lacquer off, and not the paint. I got some denatured alcohol here. We'll see if that takes it off. Nope. All right, here's some automotive all-purpose lacquer thinner. That's not touching it. Wow. Oops. Just got some of that lacquer thinner there with a toothbrush. I'll see if that will remove it. Doesn't look like it's doing anything. Let's put some paint stripper on and brush that in with the toothbrush. See if that'll move it. So I'll leave it sit there for 10 minutes and then rub it again with a toothbrush and see if that will take it out. It's been about 10 minutes, so it's just rubbing it again to try and loosen anything that's come off in the last 10 minutes. I'd say that's pretty obvious. It's exactly the same. So let's try some steel wool with some acrylic thinners. See if that gets anywhere near it. Now I've got a bit of turpentine, which I assume this paint was turpentine based. I do intend staining this because the veneers are quite a few different colours, so whether the stain will cover the green, I don't know. It seems a bit unlikely, but maybe I should test that first and see if that's going to do it. Now I've got another bit of timber. You should be able to see the green there. There's a bit of walnut stain. So I'll just let that dry for a minute. Alright, that's been there a few minutes now. I'll just wipe it off. And you can still see the green through it. So, running out of ideas. So the thing is, of course, this timber's only a veneer and it's probably only 20 thou thick, and you don't know how much it's been sanded before I get to it. So if I just keep sanding away, I'm going to go through it. I'll have to go and think about it for a minute. After careful consideration, the borer damage and the fact that I can't get that green out from within the grain and any joins, I'm going to re-veneer it. So this is American walnut. I'll glue that on top, over the top of this on both ends of the radio, and I think that'll come up pretty nice once it's finished. This is one side of the veneer. I'm just going to make sure that edge is smooth. I've taped some emery cloth onto my level here with a bit of double-sided tape, and I've got the veneer on a bit of thin MDF here. And I'm just going to hang it over the edge and sandwich it with another one, and just very carefully just rub that up and down just to take the edge off. It's pretty straight, but I'll do this and this will just make sure there's absolutely flat. Alright, so that should be good. I'm just going to repeat the same thing with the other piece. Now when I line those up, that pretty much disappears, so yeah, that's okay. I've just got a piece of masking tape here. I'm going to put it down one side of the veneer, like that. I'm going to turn it over. I've just jacked up a bit of MDF here, and I'm going to put this edge along here. And I'm going to stick the second piece on it on a bit of an angle there. Let's just tape those together on a bit of an angle now, and when I push it down flat, it'll push that gap very tight. So there you go, perfect join there. Alrighty, I'm ready to glue this down now. I've cleaned all this off, it's nice and dust free. I've got another board I'm going to put on top, and that's MDF. It's perfectly flat. I'll leave that for a few hours, take the clamps off, and I'll repeat the same procedure on the other end. So I've also veneered the other end, so that's sitting over there. And here's the original one, so they're both drying. I'll let them go overnight at least. In the meantime, I want to try and remove these little decorative plastic features here. So this frame is actually 4 pieces, 4 corners, and they're spot welded together at the 4 places where the little plastic features are, and that's covering the join, so that's what they're for. The little plastic covers has got little pins through here, bits of plastic, and they've melted it over, so it should be just a matter of breaking that off and pushing the cover off. That's my theory. It almost just breaks off. You can just break it off with your finger, but it does leave the centre bit there, so I'm going to grind it off. Now, provided they haven't glued it, these should just come off. I think I'm just breaking the paint seal. Here's the original colour of the plastic and the original colour of the frame, plus 60 to 70 odd years. So that's good. I've got 3 more to go. That's interesting. That's the same mould as that, and then they've glued 2 little rings on it, so just glued them together. Okay, they're all off, and that's good because these are things that give me sleepless nights wondering how I'm going to do it. So I'll clean these up. I don't know, I can paint strip them, I don't suppose I can. I'll probably just have to try and clean them up and respray over the top. I'll put some paint stripper on this a bit later and clean this up. And I'll treat all the rust inside here as well. This has been overnight, so I think we can take the clamps off and have a look. There it is. There's the seam. So that's come up good. Alright. So I've got to trim off the excess veneer, and I'll just use a knife to do that. Second one, I'll just do the same. Now, what I didn't say on the last one was when you get to this end, come back this way, otherwise you'll chip the end off. So don't run that way, the end will come off. I've got some 240 grit paper here. I'm going to try and see if that's enough, and to smooth that off, then I'll gradually get finer and finer. Now, I did use an orbital on these originally because I had to take so much off. Be aware that if you use an orbital, you'll get swirl marks. So you've got to be prepared to then sand them off with a sanding block. If you haven't got a lot of material, you won't get away with it. Just doing this corner here, it's the same as when you're cutting. Don't cut where the grain's running this way. If you try and sand, you might pick that up and just take it off the edge. So sand that way and not back this way. Now, the same goes for this. The grain's running that way. Don't sand that way, you'll take the edge off. So just bring it back, sand from the corner back. It's looking really good so far. I'm going to use some 320 to give it a smoother finish. I'll give it another sand with a lighter grade of paper, and I think that'll be it. But that's, gee, that's good. That's perfect. Okay, things are progressing. I've paint stripped that and sand blasted it and rust protected it, and I'll respray the inside here with some rust protecting paint, and then I'll refinish the outside in the cream colour that it requires. But I'll do that later on. Now, another job I have to do before I refinish anything is to replace this white plastic trim that was around the front of the radio. Oh, I can't get that anywhere. I certainly can't get it in Australia, so I've given that away. So what I've done is filled up the groove with some old scrap bits of timber, glued them in, and I'm just going to machine those flush. Then I'm going to route a 3mm groove in there, and I've got some 3mm cane, and I'm just going to stick that in so it just sticks up above the timber, and should look much the same as the old one. And I'll probably paint that white. I wasn't going to do it in wood grain, but I thought perhaps I should stick to the white, seeing that's what was on there in the first place. So I'm going to machine that off first, and then I'll route a groove into it. Now I've got my router set up here, so I'll just machine this off. Now I've set up my router bit now. This is going to cut a groove. There's where the cutter is. This is a bit tricky doing it this way because I've got to try and keep that right on that mark on the turns. Not so bad on the straight, but on the turns a bit hard. If I use a handheld one, I wobble it everywhere, so this is the most stable way of doing it as far as I can see. So I'll see how we go. Looks alright, so I'll just clean it up a bit. We'll see if the cane fits. I just sanded that groove off a bit to clean it up, but there's the cane there, so I think that'll work fine. So I can glue that in there. If I paint it white, I'll glue it in and then just paint around it. If I was going to stain it, I'll stain it first, then put it in after I've done the black on the front there. So that seems to have come out okay, so I'll do the other 3 cuts now. I've done the other 3 and they've come up pretty good. I did crunch into the router at one point, so I've just put a bit of fillets up on the end here. But that'll be okay, it won't matter, it's all painted anyway, so that's good. So I'll move on to the next item. I've taken this fascia off the front of the radio chassis and just deciding what to do with it. I kind of feel I want to take this decorative pressed steel front off and try and fix it. It's got an oil canning. I don't know if I can do much with that. But it interferes with the needle as it goes past it, keeps hitting it, so I need to do something. So I'll see how hard it is to get off. I think it's just these sides, got about 2-3 nails in it, and then there's a row of nails on the top, and there's 4 nails on the front there, so I'll just try and get them off, see how easy it is to get away. A lot of the reason I wanted to get this off was you could see the dirt through it, so that's good. I'll clean that up and might even repaint it perhaps if it needs it. Here's the original colour of the mesh too, and it's a gold, so I'll paint it gold. Now this oil canning problem with this is going to be tricky to repair, and if I can't do it, I'll just leave it. The oil can seems to be right where I've put that cross, and it appears to be around here, so the oil can seems to be around there. Now one way to fix it is to heat that up in the centre there, and as it gets bigger, of course, you can knock it down with a hammer and shrink it, but I'm a bit worried about doing that on this. I don't want to ruin it. I don't really want to hit it. When it cools off, it'll pull back in. So what I'm thinking of doing is running along with a hammer along the bottom and maybe just stretching that out a bit and then taking out the dimple that's in the centre there. So I'll do that. So I'll just concentrate on this area here and just see if anything happens. As I said, I don't want to ruin it. That actually appears to be working. It's still oil canning, but it's flattened it out. It's actually has lost the wave in it. So I'll just keep going a bit longer. I'm almost putting a bit too much stretch in there, so I'm going to stop there. Might run up here. So that oil can's almost all gone there. I can. It's actually just bending. The whole thing's bending. It's not oil canning. I've just put that back on the bit of wood there, and holding it down, and that's gone. The oil can's gone. So that's great. I didn't know how I was going to do that. So learn something every day. Now I'm just going to paint strip it, and it's got bits of paint missing from here. So I'm just going to paint strip the whole thing, and we'll respray it later. It's just getting a bit late. I'm going to try and do one of these cane rods and put it in here and just see how it goes. I don't want to do them all in case they don't work. So I'm going to experiment with one. So I'll put it in there. Just put a bit of tape to hold that at that end for a minute. Another bit there. Okay, so we should be able to wrap that around there. I'll just make sure there's plenty of glue on this end. This is under a bit of strain up down here. Yeah, I almost need to put a nail in there. Okay, that was a bit of a disaster. I ended up putting a clamp across there. It was all hands on deck there for a second. So I'll have to come up with a better way of doing that. Maybe start at that end and somehow clamp it down or something to hold it, and then go the other way. But I think it's come out okay otherwise. So I'll see what it looks like in the morning. Well, it's the next morning. That clamp I had sitting on top of here fell off during the night, so it was on the floor when I came in. So that's the end that was giving me trouble. So I've made a bit of a mess of it. But anyway, this is the bottom. You can't see this when the radio's sitting down. So I'll take the tape off. See how it went. That has come up really well. Very, very nice. All right, that's great. So I'll do the rest of it. So that's the other three done now, and it was a bit easier than I thought. I ended up just taping the ends there. They were fine. They bent down there quite well. So no clamp. While you've been watching my video, I've been out in the workshop and I've painted that backboard for the front fascia. The grille's done. So I made a little mask up for that. and painted it brown, then I've painted the top gold. So yeah, that looks really nice now. So that fits on there like that. Yeah, so that's looking great. And I've also done the frame here in the cream that I'm going to use, the colour. So that'll be the colour. And I'm also working on the ends. So there's a bit of work in these ones. This front here has got to be black. I've got to pick out the white cane lines there. The inside here is cream, and then the outside has to be stained and then clear coated. So quite a few operations in that, and of course I've got to wait every time for it to dry. So that's just going to take a long time to do. I'll just carry on with these two guys here. I need to go around and fill up all the little defects in it. It's got a primer on it at the moment, so I can see where the defects are. So I'll just go back and fill them up. This is the bottom plate of the radio, the timber plate that goes on the bottom. There's the access hole that you can service the chassis without pulling the radio out. It has a little problem. The problem is this: the base had bore around it as well. They've come out and eaten a lot of that edge there. The sides fit on this edge here, so I need all the purchase I can get. There's not much holding the sides on. So what I'm thinking of doing is routing out the damage here, not all the way through, just leave some of the original there, and I will make a little patch, cut it out of here and put that in there and glue it in flush. And once the patch is dried, I'll just route that out again to bring it back to what it was. Okay, I've got my piece of timber here, I've got the router set up, so I'm just going to route out the bottom. You won't be able to see it. Alright, that's come out okay, so I'll just make a little patch to fit in there now. Alright, that'll do, good. Well, there it is. So that's come up pretty good. Not real pretty on the bottom, I'm afraid, because I used the wrong filler. I was going to paint it in Jara, but the cans failed, so I had to do it in teak, so it's not red anymore. Anyway, the repairs come up good though. That's the main thing. It's got to have little cleats put in here, little 45 supports once the sides are on. So I'm not going to paint this yet. I'll do it after I put the sides on. This is the back off the radio, and it's just curled up. It's in pretty good condition, but these ends have curled up. So I'm going to try and flatten it again. This is just some form of cardboard. I think if I wet it and then clamp it down flat, it should dry again flat, I hope. So I'm going to spray it both sides. I've got some Glad wrap down here to keep it off my bench, and I'm going to put some Glad wrap on the top and then another piece of MDF on the top of that. So let's see how this all works. has been here for about 24 hours, so I'll just see how it's going. Well, I have to say that looks remarkably good. I was a bit worried I put too much water on it, but no, it's going to make it great. Looks like new. And once again, I didn't really know what was going to happen there, so that's quite a good outcome. It probably needs to dry out a bit more, but I'll just leave it on something flat and let it dry out naturally. I've sanded down the 3 panels here, and I'm going to put some grain filler in it now. So I'll just use the aqua coat as I always do. Now, because these are a different colour, this has also got some remnants of paint in there. I'm going to spray it with the stain mixed with the lacquer to try and keep it similar colours. You've probably seen me use this aqua coat a few times. I just rub it in and then let it dry for 40 minutes or so, and you sand it off, and it fills all the little grain pores, whatever you've got in there, and gives you a nice smooth surface. I'll just give them half an hour or so to dry, and I'll come back and sand them off. That's all dry now. I'll sand it off. I've got some 320 here. I might have to go a bit coarser than that. We'll see what happens with the 320. The 320 is a bit light. I'll use some 240. That's very smooth now. Very good. So I'll continue with those. I'll do the other 2 and then I'll come back. I've prepped the timber up, so I'm just going to spray some lacquer on it. Well, there they are, they're all done, and they've come up pretty good. They're a little darker than they should be because I'm going to sand them back, so I went a bit darker, and they'll come out the right shade when I'm finished. It's the next morning. I've rubbed these back slightly with some waterproof paper, and they're nice and smooth, so I'm going to put some clear coat over it now and just build that up so it gives you a nice finish. I'll let those dry. I'm going to give it a few more coats and then we'll have a look at it when it's finished. That's it. I'm not going to spray anymore. It's got at least 3 good coats on there, so they'll come up terrific. I'll just need to polish them off once they're dried, and they'll be ready to fit back on the radio. Now these are dried, and I'm just cleaning them up with a bit of very light wet and dry paper or waterproof paper, and then I'll polish it. This is just an automotive polish. It's reasonably coarse. I've finished with a coarse one. This is a finer one, and that'll just bring the luster out of this. Well, there it is. That's not totally clean. It needs another polish after this, just to get rid of all the rubbish, and it'll put a bit of a dull shine on it, if you like. But that's come up really well. I've got the other 2 to do. I think I'll be just about finished the case after that. These are the little plastic features that were on the metal frame around the radio that covered the little join in the frame. Now I've just glued them onto a post so that I can paint them. I've sanded these back, tried to get in the grooves, cleaned them up, smoothed them out, and hopefully they'll be okay. I don't know what's on there now, and I don't know if the paint I'm going to put on will react with it or not, So I'm just going to do just a little bit and see what happens. I'll just let it dry. If it's okay, I'll do the rest of them. So I'll just spray here and see what happens. It's got two types of paint there, so I'll just try and cover both. Hopefully it doesn't react. Well, it hasn't reacted immediately, so I'll let it dry and we'll come back and look at it later. That's been an hour and it's touch dry now, but it hasn't really affected the paint underneath. It seems to be adhering okay as well. I'm just going to apply very thin coats. I don't want to get the solvents to soak too heavily into the paint underneath. So I think we'll get away with this. And just out of interest, this paint isn't the same colour as I've painted the rest of the radio. It's a similar colour. I just wanted it to stand out a little bit from the frame that it fits onto. Didn't want it just blending in completely, so hopefully this works out alright. Alright, I'll just let these dry for about an hour, then I can put a second coat on, and if that's enough I'll just leave it like that. They seem to be coming out pretty good. There's the case all laid out on the bench. I just thought it'd be interesting to see all the parts. I'm ready to put it back together, but I haven't got time this week, so I'm going to do it next week. I still have to do the chassis, but I'm not going to get too involved with that. I've tried to keep it to the original colours, and I think I've probably done pretty well with that. So it'd be interesting to see what it actually looked like in the shop 50, 60, 70 years ago. If you've enjoyed the series so far, I hope you can join me next week for my next radio adventure.